Oh, Mike, I hear such lovely things about what you're doing with your ministry these days.
Oh, well, thank you. We're actually pretty proud to be part of what God's doing in it.
Oh, isn't that nice? It is so lovely that the kids
Well,
have something to do.
we're not just limited to
Well, I hear you guys play that Dungeons and Dragons. You wouldn't catch me dead getting dressed up and running around in the woods.
Actually, if you're doing that, you're probably doing something called LARPing, which is
Well, frankly, I think it's about time somebody dragged those guys out of their parents' basement and taught them how to be real men.
Now just stop it. I've worked with a lot of different missionaries to different cultural experiences. And pretty much in every case, there's always that awkward transition period when they're trying to figure out and trying to learn what the reality is versus the perception of that culture. Because no matter where you are, no matter who you're talking to, there's what we think about that situation and what actually is. For instance, I'll throw one out there that's more generic. I'm from New Jersey. And I lose track of the number of people who say, "But you don't have a New Jersey accent." It's because only a very select few of us actually talk like the way you're expecting us to talk. I don't do that. None of my family does that. It's not who we are. Likewise, when it comes to gamers, I constantly field a plethora of weird misconceptions. Now, some of it is just plain... I don't want to use ignorance because it's a very strong word, but it's ignorance. They just don't know. And some of it is outright misconception. They have a distinct picture of what gaming is like and what gamers are like, and it puts up a lot of boundaries trying to get them to come out and interact with people who game, or the games themselves. As such, I get frustrated because I don't know how many times I've addressed the same selection of issues. But I figured I wasn't alone in this. So I set up a poll in InnRoads Ministries Facebook groups. It's called The Tavern. It's our Facebook group. It's our place where all the people from across the country and even across the world get together to talk about the games and to pray for each other and to do all the stuff that we love and is really the foundation of this ministry. I seeded it with a couple that I was thinking about, the frustrations that I deal with, and then I just said, you're able to put in as many as you want, vote for any and all of them that resonate with you, that you have to deal with, and that you're sick and tired and frustrated and it's driving you nuts. The response was huge. It took me minutes to realize that I really wasn't the only person who felt this frustration. When I came up with the concept for this video, I thought it would be real simple. I had 5 things, I'd put them in order, and that would be the end of it. But when I did the poll, I realized that some of the things that people were bringing up that I hadn't even thought of are actually really kind of important. And while there weren't enough to extend the list to a top 10, I do want to very briefly touch base with these other 3 that were listed, and then we can move on to the top 5 in proper. While none of these honorable mentions are going to get a lot of time because they're just honorable mentions and not really focused on the list, this one's especially not because I already kind of addressed it in an article on the site, but it was listed, and so I want to at least say it. The misconception that Monopoly is the greatest game ever. It's not. It's really not. And before I get myself in trouble, I'm just going to move on to the next one. The next one I'll address is an honorable mention, partly because it didn't get the votes, and partly because it's not really a misconception. It's 100% true. Games are expensive, and that expense can be a barrier to entry. That's quantifiably proven. However, it's not 100% true. There are plenty of things out there that are real cheap and real fun, like our friends at Button Shy. Every one of these is like $10-15. You can go online and get one-page role-playing games absolutely for free, and they're worth playing. Some of them are really, really interesting. So, while it is true, and not a misconception, it's definitely worth thinking about. The last honorable mention is one that I wish I didn't have to mention, but I do. And it's especially true in light of some recent events that I'm not going to go into because it could honestly be its own video. Girls don't play games. It's an absolute lie, a terrible falsehood, and in fact, the ladies outnumber the men at most of our events, so I really have no idea where this thought came from. And besides, even when it comes to role-playing games, I'll point you to Heather's article. It's kind of awesome. Number 5, top frustrations that gamers are sick and tired of. All gamers are like... insert stereotype here. See, stereotypes don't work in general. They just don't work out the social mathematics. You can't say all X are like Y because the sample size is way too large and there's too many variables to deal with. You just can't make it work. But it's especially true with gamers. I'll give you an example. I like role-playing games. And I like casual games. And I like strategy games. I like 4X games. I like competitive card games. I like deck building games. I can go on. There are too many different types of gamer to say that all gamers are like anything. We come from all different walks of life, speak all different languages. You can't put us all in one bin. Now, granted, there are some things that there are actually occasionally, like, not highly scientific studies, but, little polls or whatever. There are certain trends you'll see in gamers. They tend to enjoy fields like IT and engineering. I don't, but they tend to. And there are other things that are kind of threads that you can see throughout the hobby, but in no regard can any of us be nailed down to all gamers are like anything. I'll give you a really, really, really blatant example. I'm going to list 4 names right now. Vin Diesel, Stephen Colbert, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and Anderson Cooper. You look at these gentlemen and you think, well, maybe there's some overlap. I mean, Vin and The Rock, they do, serious action flicks, and maybe Colbert and Cooper, they interview people, and there's some stuff for there, but all of these guys are avid role-playing game players. All of them have said so on camera. I challenge you to link all 4 of them. It's simply impossible to make those stereotypes stick across the board. And while I'd love to say they don't exist for a reason, they do come from a place. But to say that you don't want to get into gaming, or to say that all people who are into gaming are like a thing, it's unfair. And while it kind of goes against my point to say that I'm speaking for all gamers, but that's kind of what this list is when I say, we really wish you'd stop. Number 4 on the frustrations that gamers simply can't stand and wish they didn't have to deal with. Games are too hard and too confusing. In a way, it's not a terrible misconception, because there are some really intense games. There are games that I don't even play because of the depth of time and commitment and deep nerdery you got to get into in order to understand all the bits and pieces moving about the board. However, that's not all of them. You can't always speak to that. And if that's the kind of game that you love, by all means, pursue them, and there is a wealth of titles that you can get into and just tear apart and love. I personally tend to be on the medium end of the spectrum, and there's even games that are lighter than the ones I like. there's literally a game for everybody. I've said that before. And all you really need to do if you want to get into gaming is to find somebody willing to teach you. Find somebody at the level of game that you want to try and simply ask them to play. Because we want you to play. We want other people to play with, other experiences, other voices at our tables. We want one other person we can call on game night and say, dude, we're busting this game out. Do you want to come play? So we want to teach you. You can find a game at whatever level you want. There's a game, I usually use a spectrum. There's a game called Win, Lose, or Banana. It's a 3-card game. You pick a card. It's either win, lose, or banana. That's pretty much the game. There's a few other things, but that's pretty much the game. Win, lose, or banana. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got things like Twilight Imperium 3. I know of nobody who can get that game completed in fewer than 5 hours. At least not consistently. And those are the people who know every rule and don't have to look up anything. It just takes that long because there are that many pieces to it. There are games out there that you literally build a civilization from the ground up and have to manage economies. It's a big spectrum. I promise you, there's a game in there that you'll really, really like. And if you've ever been instructed by me on how to play a game, I usually start out with the same speech. It's gotten to the point where people can recite it for me. You're going to sit down and play this game for one full round, and you're going to think, wow, this is really confusing, and I don't understand what's going on. But at the end of that round, and the start of the second round, you're going to know how to play. Because it's one thing to hear rules, and it's another thing to see them and play them. And even then, you're going to want to play it a couple more times to really understand. So whether you want Win, Lose, or Banana, or you want Twilight Imperium 3, there is a game out there. Hundreds and thousands of them are coming out almost on the daily. You can find them if you want to. So don't sit around and talk about how complex and awful they all are. Find somebody who will show you the good ones. And the ones exactly as hard as you want them to be. Number 3 on our list of frustrations that come from misconceptions about gaming might be biased towards our particular branch of the gaming hobby. Those of us who also have religious affiliation, specifically Christians. But there's a reason why it still showed up in the tavern, because while not everybody in the tavern has any sort of clear declaration of faith, they're at least faith adjacent, because they're in the tavern. Number 3 is Dungeons and Dragons is demonic, leads to teaching real magic, or leads people to kill themselves. Now, when I talk to gamers in the broad spectrum of the world with no religious affiliation whatsoever or ties to anyone who has any religious affiliation, they think we're over that. They think that there's a few crazy folks up in the woods that maybe still think that way, but by and large, people don't actually think that this is true. And I wish I could tell you that they were right. Now, to be fair, it's not nearly as bad as it was back then. A quick Google search will show you a litany of stories about the moral panic or the satanic panic of the 1980s when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, on the same night as I filmed this, I was shown a link to a video that the New York Times put together on their YouTube channel talking about the fact that that was very, very much a thing. And within the past 2 months, I can tell you that I have fielded the questions of, is this safe for my kid? Is this going to be something that Satan is going to use to tempt my child? And I hear that's how you really learn magic. At least 3 times. I could spend an entire video just on this subject, but I won't, because like several other points that we've already seen, I've already talked about it on our website. You should go there. We've talked about it a bunch. You can also go to the Christian Gamers Guild because they have an entire frequently asked questions page about this very thing. If you're watching this and you think that Dungeons & Dragons is going to lead to some kind of demonic influence, if you think that it's going to teach you real magic, I can't prove to you that it's not, because you're going to think that regardless. So all I can do in this instance is use me as an example. I might not do it for a living at the moment, but I'm a preacher. I went to seminary. I went to Bible college. I firmly believe that Jesus is everything that he said he was. That he died and rose again, and that paid for my sins. That the Holy Spirit lives within me right now. And I will tell you, I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons since I was 16. A full year before I met God. And I don't know real magic. And I could point to 7 or 8 different things that the devil would use way earlier than D&D if he wants to tempt me to do something. There's a lot of people who come through our doors at events and at TavernCon and email me constantly. They're hurt and they're tired. And they really wish that someone would just listen to them. God forbid, even play with them. I don't know how to respond to number 3, and I think even though the other ones ranked higher in the votes and really do cause me a lot of frustration, I think the thing that really irks me about this misconception is that I can't prove it wrong. I really wish I could. I can't convince you that this misconception is false. But it is. There's nothing to it. And I would be happy to show you. Number 2 is felt by pretty much all of us that have reached a certain level of distinction when it comes to our age. Number 2 of the misconceptions that lead to gamer frustration. Gaming is just for kids. I don't know where the mystic line of adulthood is. I don't know where the line is that says you can't enjoy the things that you enjoyed when you were younger. You just don't. I was introduced to gaming by somebody 30 years older than me. I play with people that are older than me. In fact, some of the greatest gaming experiences I've had are with people significantly older than I am. And at almost 37 years old, I'm not exactly young either. Hardly old, but I've got some years on me. So there's this misconception that says that only kids can play games. That there's only value in young people playing games. This is especially true when I make games in church settings. The first question that everyone asks when I said there's a game day, it's open to everybody, the first question is, what's the age limit? And the boggled eyes when I say, there is none. Literally everybody can come and play. Like I've brought about some kind of new revelation into their life. Like, gosh, maybe I can enjoy myself. Maybe there's something worth playing. Because quite frankly, there are titles on the shelves behind me I don't want to play with kids. In fact, I would push kids away from some of them. Do you want to explain what's going on in Freedom the Underground Railroad to a 5-year-old? Because I don't. Games deal with heavy issues. Games can deal with deep strategies and complex problem solving. And yeah, kids are more than welcome to play. There are titles that I've just started recently getting that I play myself in their kids' games. There are games that I want, that are on my wish list, that are kids' games. Games like Rhino Hero, where you are building up this pile of cards into a building and trying to get a little wooden figure of a rhino with a mask and a cape to hop up the tower. I want to play that, but it's a kid's game. I don't know where we got this weird belief that only kids can be entertained by games, or challenged by games, or grow by playing. I have no intention of ever stopping. I have no intention of limiting myself to only playing with certain age groups. In fact, I think gaming is at its best when you get people that span the entire spectrum of ages playing at the same table. Because they have a lot to learn from each other. And there's not a whole lot of places where they can naturally hang out and not have this weird kind of vibe just kind of hovering in the room. Play a game together. It breaks all the boundaries, all the rules, all the weirdness. Why do we think that it's only for kids? It's the reason this is number 2. I don't care what age you are. Go play something. And the number 1 misconception about gaming that drives our gamers nuts is that gaming is a waste of time. There's a quote that I heard, and I can't remember exactly which philosopher said it, but it's been around for a long, long time. It's the idea that you'll learn more from 1 hour of playing with someone than from an entire day of conversation. And I really do believe that. I think that there's something that happens when we play together. When we throw away all the stuff that we put on ourselves, the propriety and the expectation, and just say, all right, here are the rules. The other rules that you carried with you don't matter. These are what you do, and these are who you're playing with. There's something just inherently valuable in that. Regardless of the other stuff, there's never a thing as just playing. Playing together is a beautiful thing, and something that I really think that we need to do more of. Because we've lost touch with each other. We've lost that basic understanding of human decency that says the other person is just as valid as I am. And I think we've lost it because we view each other as other. And we've lost the concept that we're all the same. And I think playing together fixes, not all, obviously, but a lot of that. Games teach us. Games encourage us. Games challenge us. There are things that I can tell you in a game that I could not tell you to your face. There are things that I cannot see about myself that I can see on the character I'm playing in the game board. Gaming's never a waste of time. Sure, like anything else in life, you can obsess about it to unhealthy degrees. But that's anything. Managed well and as part of a balanced life, there is a tremendous wealth of wonder and amazement and growth that gaming helps make happen. You can point to studies that say that gaming teaches us. There's a reason you play with your kids. And I just got done telling you that just because they say it helps kids develop doesn't mean that there isn't value for us too. I've spent roughly the past half hour just addressing a couple issues in gaming, and I'm just scratching the surface on a lot of this stuff. Gaming involves thousands and thousands of people, literally around the world. And they want to know you. They want to be known. So, I want to challenge you to put away these misconceptions and put away the thought that all gamers are anything. And go out and meet some. And better yet, play with them. Ask them what their favorite game is and ask them to teach it to you. Because I don't care which one of us it is. I don't care what breed of gamer you're talking to. If you want to learn their favorite game and honestly want to learn it, you will make a connection with that person that you might not ever make otherwise. I'm asking you, as a guy who spends a lot of time being frustrated, to just play.